All right, this is the agenda. We're going to start with basic navigation data entry, and then we'll look at performing calculation using formulas. So let's go into the system. My Excel happened to be tagged here to the menu bar, so I'm opening that up. When that pops up, you're going to see an option here highlighting to start with a blank worksheet. So let's do that. Click on that. That will open up Excel, and what I'm highlighting here is really the workspace where we'll be entering data, writing formulas, and really this is the main area to work in. On the left hand side, you'll see numbers going down. These indicates the row numbers of this sheet. Similarly, we also have columns starting from A, B, C, and so on. What that allows us to do is allows us to have each cell having a unique address, which is a combination of the row number and the column number. So here you see C2. The top left cell will be A1 and so on. As I'm going through with my cursor here left and right, you can see that the address changes there. So you always can see where you are. If you look at the top right, top left there, you see that the address changes depending on which cell you're in. On top here, you have the ribbon. This is really the shortcuts into different functionality like formatting, things like that. You'll see us use this in this session today. Let's start by keying in product ID. So we're going to create a list of products. So I just go straight into a cell A1 here and then start keying in product ID. You can do that in the cell or in the formula. So the second column here, I'm typing in the product name, and I just happen to do that in the formula. Whatever you have in the formula will show up in the cell and the other way around. Note here that the cursor changes. This means that I can actually do something with this, and I can, in this case here, I'm expanding it. So pay close attention to how the cursor changes as you hover over it. So let me just type in the price here. What we're going to do is we're going to add in product ID. So product 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. Pause the video if you want to catch up here, and then resume when you're ready. So what we're going to do, we're going to type in a few product name here, chai. You can see the other product. I can go in and type it into the formula field just to show you that you have an option to do both. So syrup, second product. I'm typing in Cajun seasoning. And the last product here I want to type in is olive oil. Note that I can keep typing in the product ID 5, 6, 7. But there is a nice feature within Excel that actually allows you to do that a little bit quicker. Imagine you have hundreds of products. You don't want to keep typing in the numbers. So I'm just going to delete these numbers again. And if you select, let's say 3 and 4, so you tell Excel how to increment the numbers, it actually will automatically, if you drag it on the lower right there, note the cursor, it would automatically fill in what the next number is going to be. So after 4, you'll have 5 because you selected 3 and 4, so it knows how much to increment it with. I'm just going to type in additional products here. And the last product I think we want to add is curry sauce, so we'll just stop there. Note that if I drag in 7, because I've only selected 7, Excel will just continue 7 because it doesn't know that it needs to increase it by 1 or by 2. But if I select, let's say 6 and 7, it then knows, well, okay, well, after 6 and 7 you have 8, so it will increment that. So just to show you how really Excel thinks about these things. You see the cursor changes. Again, I can use that to when I hover over 2 columns, I can use that to drag columns, make them wider. There are a few other ways of doing that, but this is sort of a very common way of just dragging the column to make that wider. We're going to go ahead and put in some prices, and let's make these prices a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to have some prices with one decimals, no decimals, and then we'll look at how we can actually format this so that it looks right. So right now you can see some of these prices are 1 decimal, some of them are 2 decimals. So this is an opportunity for you to see how we can format this so that it all looks consistent. So it all has either no decimal or it has two decimals. So I'm selecting the entire list of numbers that I want to change. And this is now where I'm going to be using my ribbon. So I'm going to click on my ribbon, and one of them is the one to add in the decimal. So if I click on that, you'll see that it would add the decimal, so it adds 2 decimal. The other one is for me to decrease or increase the decimal. So here I can decrease the decimals and I can increase the decimals again. So very nice feature there. Similarly, I can also select blocks of text, in this case headers, and I can then move them around depending on where my cursor is. You see when my cursor have these arrows pointing to each direction, I can use that to drag it, the header, or maybe even the entire table here. So watch me drag the entire table to the right. You see I'm dragging it back again because I can do that when the cursor is at a certain place. So here I can maybe drag the columns. See there, I'm on the edge, and I can then drag the columns over there. When I select the edge, I can then drag it back. The key here is where the cursor is. This allows you to do certain things. Here I'm just dragging a specific cell, going to the edge of the cell and then dragging it. Another things that we want to do is on the header, we want to make that stand out because it is a header. So you can add different background colors, make it bold. First thing is that if I hover over the background colors of the cells, without actually picking one, I can just hover over them. It will actually show me what that would look like. In this case, I think we're just going to make it bold. So I'm clicking on that. And then at this point in time, go ahead and click on File, and let's save this. So this will really conclude just the first section here. You see I actually went into the icon there because the first time, so I can just click on the save icon there and then give it a name. So we're going to call this one first table. So when we come back, we'll expand on this. So this is first table, and I could then just go ahead and click on save, but note where it's going to save. So in my case here, it's going to save into this folder, my tutorials folder, but you could have selected more option and picked another folder. So in my case, it's on my C drive under users, and then this is a specific folder that I wanted to save it as. So click on save, and then we'll resume after this. All right, so we just finished up the basic navigation and data entry. We created table 1. We're going to now look at performing calculation using formulas in Excel. So let's go ahead and open up Excel. If you remember, I have my Excel icon here on my menu bar, so I'm clicking on that. So this time we're not going to open up or create a blank worksheet. We're going to use the table that we created a little bit earlier in this video. So go ahead and watch that. And then once you have that ready, you'll have it here. We're going to really be expanding this table that I'm showing here. So I'm just highlighting what it is we're going to expand. We're going to expand this table to have formulas. If you haven't created this already, go ahead and do that now. Pause the video. So what we want to do is we want to start creating formulas. So first thing, let's get a little bit better organized in this workbook. So you see here, this one is called sheet 1. This is a sheet that's in a workbook. Let's call that products. This is a good way for you to really organize your data instead of having everything in one place. You can see what I'm highlighting here is a place for you to create different sheets, which is good practice to do that. So let's go ahead and create another sheet. If you want to change the name of it, you don't do that in a cell as I'm showing you right here. Do that by double clicking on the sheet itself and then changing the name there. So let's call this one customers. And I can keep adding these sheets. So let's add another sheet here. And this sheet, let me see, what should we call this one? So we have two now. We have product, we have customers. So I think we will go ahead and just create a new sheet here and rename that to be inventory. So double click on there. And I'm just going to call this one inventory. It's a good way for you to organize your worksheet instead of having everything in one sheet. You have it in multiple sheet depending on the data that you have in each sheet. I can right mouse click on the inventory, for example. You see I'm selecting it here. Right mouse click on it. So if I want to call it something else, right mouse click and I can rename it, delete it, copy it. Or I can just double click on it and just rename it. I can also move the sheets around. The order doesn't really matter right now. When we look at macros later, then the order, the index of these sheets will matter. But for now, you can have in which order you want to. So we're going to go ahead here. We're going to look at creating data so that we can actually enter formulas. So let's start off with D1. We're going to just type in cost price. So we buy product at a certain price. Let's say we buy them at $12, for example, and we'll sell them for 18. So that allows us to calculate profit, margins, those type of things. So let's enter $8 here. We sell it for 10. We sell Cajun seasoning for 22. We buy it for 20. This is just a way for you to have some data to do calculations on. You can put in whatever number you want there, but try and have them lower than the sales price so that we have a nice profit on each product. Note here that some of these numbers are with 1 decimal, some of them are no decimal, and that is something that we want to clean up a little bit. I like to have similar decimals. Like you see here, the price all have 2 decimals. So if you recall, I can select the entire numbers and format them to have commas, decimals, and so on. So I'm just selecting all of this and I'm going in there and I'm formatting them to have 2 decimals. So go ahead and do that. It looks a little bit nicer. And once you've done that, what you're going to see, this will pop up again on your Excel. You will have things popping up here, and I just want to highlight how you can go in and address some of these things popping up, but I'll show you that in a second. Let's just type in product margin. So here we're calculating the product margin, and what we're going to do, we're going to actually have a formula in this cell. So you can type in the formula either in the formula field or you can type in directly into the cell. But note here the pop-up that I talked about. So there's a pop-up here that, you know, depending on different things, it will pop up. You can clear that by just clicking this button here. This gives you a little bit more real estate. So let's just do that so that it doesn't interfere with our view here. So back to the product margin, you can call it product profit. So the way you type in the formula, you always have to start with an equal sign. That's how you tell Excel, hey Excel, this is going to be the formula. Otherwise it thinks you're putting in a number or a text. It's not going to do calculation based on that. We want to calculate the sales price, so the one I just called price, and deduct the cost price from it. So sales price is 18, deduct the cost price of 12. We should then have a profit of $6 per product. You can see there that I'm basically just picking one cell, putting in minus another cell, and then doing enter. But obviously you want to start with the equal sign. So I did that, and I can do the same thing here. I can do that in the cell equal to this and point to that, minus obviously in between. And you can also just type in the cell like C2 minus D2, but you can also just point to them. If I click on the cell here, the E2, you can actually see where this formula is being, the data is coming in from. So it has color coding, so I can actually see, yep, the blue there, that's the first one. And then I'm deducting the red cell, which is the second one, D. And that's how you get the results. So it's a nice way for you to just keep track of when you have a long formula where you're doing multiplication, different cells, they tend to be color coded, so you can easily sort of figure out where they're coming from. Let's go ahead and do equal to. So here you can see there's this tag here that I can pull. So instead of me keep typing in equal to this minus that, I can just pull that because it's essentially the same formula, just different rows. If you're doing that, Excel is smart enough to know that you want to calculate C minus D, but obviously it's going to take the row into account. So it's not going to be C2 every time. So here you can see it already did that. Again, imagine you have 100 rows. You don't want to keep typing the formula. You can just drag it down once it knows what it is you want to deduct from what. So we did that. We did product margin. Now let's go ahead and keep track of how many items we're selling. So this will allow us to calculate the revenue. So if I'm selling chai and chai is $18 and I'm selling one chai, well, the revenue is going to be just $18. But if I'm selling, for example, 40 items of chai, then the revenue is going to be $720, for example, because it's 18 times 40. And this is something that Excel can very quickly do for you here. So you don't have to sort of remember it in your head. So I'm just putting in 40 items. So we've sold 40 items. Here, I'm just typing in other numbers here. Note here that the numbers are with a decimal, which for me doesn't really make sense because I'm selling whole products. So I'm not selling half chai. So we'll fix that in a second here. So I just have like whole numbers. And once we've done that, we can actually add in the column that we will call revenue or product revenue. So you have a revenue per product, and that is that the price of the item multiplied by how many we've sold. That's going to give us that revenue. So let's go ahead and this time do the equal to, but this time it's not going to be minus. It's going to be this cell times how many items we have sold, and times is the star sign on your keyboard. In my keyboard here, when I look down my keyboard, is the Shift 8 that turns into a star there. So what we want to do is we want to multiply this column with the price column. But note here, and I'm just fixing that double the digits there, so that I only have one decimal. I can right mouse click on all these cells and say, let me just fix that. So right mouse click, format cells. I can then reduce the decimals there. So it's 0. That's one way of doing it. So I'm not going to do that. A quicker way is simply just reducing it on the ribbon there. So you can see I can increase it, I can decrease it. So I'm just going to decrease that. It just looks better for me because I don't sell half products. So now let's go ahead and type in that formula for the revenue. So we'll always, remember, always start with equal to. That's how you tell Excel, I'm going to give you a formula now. So we do equal to, and then we do that cell there where we have the price, the sales price, times, and that's that star. And you can see there, so you can type it either in the formula fields or in the cell. And then we point to times what? In this case, times the sold items. That's going to give us that revenue. And then you can either click on that checkbox there, or you can click on enter, and then the formula is there. And at this point in time, we're just going to drag it in again. Note how the cursor changes, and we're going to take that and drag that into the other rows here. Note that 720, I want to actually do that to be dollars, but it could be pound, it could be euros, it could be yen, and so on, whichever symbol you really want. So in my case, I want to format that so that it has my dollar sign, so I can very easily see this is an amount. And then I'm going to drag it down. What's going to happen now, you're going to get the formula and the formatting on the other rows. Now go down to the bottom of this table, and then just type in total there, because we want a nice summarize. Now some of these columns don't make sense to summarize, like product ID. So look at, you know, which columns make sense to summarize. Maybe the product margin makes sense, sold definitely makes sense, and the product revenue definitely makes sense. So we'll just summarize 3 columns, and just so you can see different ways of creating these summaries, the totals. So what you can do, so you stand at the bottom of the numbers that you want to add up, and in this case here, let's say the sold items, we want to add those up, or we're going to add in, let's say, the product margin. So you always begin with the equal to, but you can click on you see on the menu bar there, the ribbon. So you can do equal to, but you can also click on the ribbon and get this wizard. It's a formula wizard, FX. Click on that. It's going to give you, first of all, this is just filtered to a few of the mostly frequently used formulas. But you see here, what I'm selecting is that you can actually view even more functions. So if I click on, these are some of the functions, but if I click on all, you now get a list of all functions. So you have statistical function, mathematical function. We're going to go back into our mostly frequently used function, and we actually need this one called sum. We could have typed it in, but this is a nice way of doing that. Maybe we'll type in the next column. So here, this is the wizard, and it tried to guess what it is you want to summarize. So you think, well, is this what you want to summarize there? And you can say, yeah, maybe, but you can just delete that. And then what you want to do is you want to now tell it what it is to summarize. So we want to summarize these fields. So you go back to your wizard, you click on that, make sure that's selected. And then as you're dragging it down, the wizard keeps track of what it is you're selecting. And then you could have typed this in, but this is a quick way for you to see that. And it even tells you what the sum of that is before you commit to it. It also tells you what it is it's summarizing. If you're happy with that, you can click on OK. And that will create that sum. So the sum of this product margin is going to be that number there, 3059. Note here that you can also type in the sum like this. So you start equal to sum bracket, and then you select those fields, and then you end with the bracket. That's important, right? So you select the fields, it's going to do the F2 to F8, and then you do the brackets at the end there. That's very important. And you can also see if I'm selecting them, there's also like a quick sum at the bottom that I can just look at it without actually creating a formula. I can just quickly do like a sum, and you can even change it to be like average, account, those type of things. So now let us create a sum for the last column. So I could have gone in again, go to the formula, type it in, but I can just drag it over because we already have a similar function. But note here that the format is not the same as the other rows, because it was like a dollar sign. So I could go up here and I can look at what these other rows have in terms of formatting. So it looks like it's accounting and 2 decimal with a dollar sign. I could have gone in there, done the same thing for this one, but that's a lot of clicks. So there is a quicker way of doing that. So this is just showing you how it could have done that, but you can see there's a lot of click. What you can do instead, if you like a format of a cell, you can click on that, and then you select the format painter, and you point to the cell you want to have the similar format. So very easy, very quickly do that. Sometimes you have a lot of formatting and you don't want to sort of go through that for every cell. This is a quick way. Let's actually just make this summary line here. Let's make that stand out. So we're going to make it bold. and we're also just going to have some borders around it. And I'm just going to zoom in here so you can see some of the options on the border that we have. Let's see here. I think we'll take the top and thick bottom border. So let's do that. And yeah, so I think this is looking better. Now we have achieved doing the calculation, so this is looking better. So let's go ahead. If you click on save now, it's just going to overwrite what you had naming wise, but we want to actually have this as a separate file. So in this case, we're going to do save as, and we want to call this one second table. So the first table is the first part of the video, and this is the second table. So go ahead and just call this one second table, click on save. And yeah, that's really it for this session. All right, so in this video, you saw how we did basic navigation, data entry. We just completed that. And then following that, we looked at how we can use Excel to perform calculation using formulas. And that's really it for this video.